afternoon, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for another debate show, and here we're looking at the League Two transfer window that's just passed and grading every one of the 24 sides that had the market just now. I'm your host, George Daggers, and joining me this afternoon is Toby Wilding to run us through the 24 clubs and how he thinks they all did in January. Toby, how are you this afternoon?
Yeah, good, thanks. Obviously, just calming down a bit now after the window. Always a busy month for us here on Football League World, but obviously really good to get into all those signings. And you were on the Championship edition of this earlier in the week. I was on League One yesterday. They've been really good so far. So it'd be nice now to give League Two the attention it deserves in terms of the transfer business, because there's plenty of clubs who've done some impressive deals over the month just gone. So yeah, good to give them a bit of a shout out and really get into some eye-catching business that's been done.
As ever in the fourth tier, plenty of moves happened across the clubs in League Two. Fans of League Two clubs, get in touch with across Facebook, Twitter and YouTube, probably for the next 30, 40 minutes live. Get in touch, let us know what you made of your club's window. Did you do enough? How would you grade it? What else would you like to have seen happen? Let us know your thoughts on what happened in January. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. Toby, we're going to start with Barrow first of all. What did you make of their window?
Yeah, reasonably solid. I mean, obviously they're towards the wrong end of the table, but they look to be well clear of the actual relegation zone and any danger in that respect. 10 points clear should be enough to keep them safe and in the Football League for another season. So it was probably all about consolidating for them really in this window, and I think they did that. John Rooney, who's coming from Stockport, if you can sort of recreate that form now at League Two level that he had for them in the National League, then he could be a really useful signing for them. Now, Canavan, obviously, he's been around at this level for quite a bit, coming in from Bradford. So again, a bit of solid League Two experience there for them. Other than that, I think sort of the eye-catching one was perhaps Jamie Devitt moving out. He never really sort of got going in the way you probably hoped he would, given what he can do at this level, and it just didn't quite work out for him. He's back at Carlisle, so we'll touch on that later. But I think all in all, a reasonably solid window, just one of consolidation for Barrow, and it seems to me like they did that pretty well, so I've gone for a B there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good summary, Toby, of Barrow's window. I think the Devitt one was a bit of a surprise. Not the fact that he left, but the fact that it just didn't really work out for him, especially given that Barrow's not too far away from Carlisle. It's not as though it was a massive uprooting for him, but sometimes these things happen. We will get to Carlisle later on, as you mentioned. Next up, though, Toby, we're going to talk Bradford City. What did you make of the Bantams market in January?
Again, fairly similar. A bit of a reasonably solid window. They were quite busy in the loan market. I think, counting it up, there were 7 signings they made, and 6 of them were temporary. So, long term there'll be things to address come the summer. But between now and the end of the season, there's something there to build on when really they need to be pushing further up the league than what they are at the minute. I think Matty Daly, he should be a really good signing for them. It was really quite impressive for Hartlepool at this level during the first half of the season. So obviously they know he's someone who can help them in League Two. Alex Bass, obviously that's a good move for him in goal. Wasn't getting the opportunities at Portsmouth with Gavin Bazin, who in on loan at Fratton Park from Manchester City. So for him to make that move, I think that really gives back Bradford a solid option between the posts. And Tom Elliott and Nathan Delfonso coming in on loan from Salford and Bolton, respectively. Again, 2 experienced strikers who know where the goal is, and that should help give Bradford some extra firepower to sort of really hopefully push them on. So again, pretty solid window, and it's another B.
Okay, B for Barrow, B for Bradford. Good stuff so far. First 2 clubs down. Up next, one other team beginning with B. We'll see if you've given them a B as well, Toby. Bristol Rovers, one eye-catching one, John Nolan coming in there towards the end of the market. How do you rate the Gases window?
Yeah, actually, I've gone for an A here. As you say, John Nolan, that's a real good sign. I think it was smart the way they moved quickly for them after he was released from Ipswich, and that brings a good sort of really solid high level option in that midfield for a League Two side. The other one that, to be honest, stood out for me was Elliot Anderson coming in from Newcastle. Obviously, he's got a great deal of potential, so I think he could be really good for Bristol Rovers at this level. But I think as well what made that one impressive for me is that for a lot of that January window, he was being linked to Luton Town in the Championship. So for Bristol Rovers to sort of go out and be able to bring him to League Two, in spite of that feels like a bit of a big coup for me in that the respect of what the Gas have done, and I wonder whether obviously Joey Barton's connection with Newcastle potentially helped them out a bit in terms of getting that done, and obviously from sort of that attacking midfielder role, he can really bring an extra sort of element and creative spark for Bristol Rovers during the second half of this season. And I think as well, Connolly, who's coming from Cardiff, just a good chance for him in defence to really get some first team football under his belt that he's not done before. So not the busiest of windows, only for him, but the sort of the players they have brought in have really impressed me. So I've gone for an A.
Yep, no, I think that's fair enough. I think quality over quantity might be one way you could describe Bristol Rovers' window. Certainly some impressive names going in there. They'll be looking to kick up the table in the months ahead. Let's go to Carlisle United next, Toby. Obviously, we've mentioned Jamie Devitt already, going back there. What other signings or exits caught your eye with the Cumbrians?
Yeah, well, they're another club who were sort of in that sort of relegation mix and just sort of keeping the heads above water so far. So you felt like maybe they did need to do some business in this window just to strengthen and push them on away from that bottom two. And I think they really did that with sort of a flurry of signings on deadline day. I think it was 9 in it overall, and 5 of them are on Monday just gone. So that really sort of bolstered their window. As we say, Jamie Devitt, he's come back and he's not the only one. Amari Patrick returning after just a few months after a move to Burton, both of them permanent. And I think given sort of what they've done for Carlisle in the past, they're going to be really popular signings at Brunton Park, and we're already sort of seeing Amari Patrick going straight back into that side and getting the goals again that's so important for Carlisle. So that's really paid off for them. There's been some exciting young loan talent as well that's come in, the likes of Tyrese Amatoy from Norwich, Mitchell Roberts from Birmingham, Owen Windsor from West Brom. So you've got that combination of, say, the experience with the likes of Patrick and Devitt, with those sort of exciting young players who can really add a lot to this Carlisle side. So I think the fact that they've managed to get all that business done and really give themselves sort of a foundation with the players they've brought in to potentially pull away from that relegation zone is really impressive. So I've given them an A as well.
Okay, yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. There's some good additions for Carlisle. Surely going to help them climb up that little League Two table a little higher. Another team that probably needs to do similar is Colchester United. I think it's fair to say level on points with Carlisle. What do you make of the used window, Toby?
Yeah, again, they're a struggling side who, for me, have really given themselves a good chance of forcing their way up the table during the rest of the season with the business they've done here. Again, they have been quite busy. I think it was 10 new players accounted over the course of the window. There's perhaps a bit of a question here of with the sacking of Hayden Mullins during the course of the month, what will that do in terms of their manager search, and how's that going to affect attracting a new boss? But nevertheless, I think the players they've brought in have been good. Obviously, Amir Hughes and Miles Kenlock, that continues sort of the Ipswich connection that really seems to be being built down there at the minute. John Akinde as well as them, he's another one he's got a lot of experience sort of at League One level, so it could be useful at League Two in terms of getting the goals that they need to sort of help pull themselves away. Not been too many high-profile departures either, with the exception of maybe Charlie Daniels, but that never really quite felt out like it was working perhaps as well as it should do. So that might not be the biggest setback for them potentially, even if it's also cleared a bit off the budget that's helped bring in some of these other players. And I've noticed as well that there have been some long-term deals being handed out by Colchester with these new signings, which I think shows a bit of intent as well. So with all that put together, it looks good business. So again, I've gone for another A.
Okay, some good stuff so far in League Two. Supporters, wherever you're watching League Two clubs, do get in touch with us across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. Up next, Toby, Crawley Town, a team similar in many respects to Bristol Rovers, really trying to get involved in that playoff mix in the final months of the campaign. What do you make of their window?
Yeah, it was a bit of a quiet one in comparison to some of the other clubs we've been talking about. So perhaps a bit harder to really judge in some senses. Hence why I've only sort of gone for a C here, because it's just not been the most prolific. I mean, Amrit Bansell McNulty's come back in from QPR. He didn't really get a chance during his loan spell with Crawley during the first half of the campaign. So I'm not really quite sure how that one will work out. Isaac Hutchinson, though, who's sort of coming, I think, from Derby, he's a sort of promising young player, so he could potentially really bring something forward for Crowley if he can hit the ground running. But yeah, just a bit quiet. So not really a spectacular window, hence a sort of middling C for Crowley.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair description of their window. John Yems will be obviously looking to try and get some more consistency out of the Red Devils in the coming weeks and months of the campaign. Exeter City, a side that so often is in that League Two playoff race, just outside the top 7 at the moment. How would you have rated their window, Toby?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've written C here, but I'm now looking at it, tempted to maybe nudge them up to a B. Obviously, they were quiet in terms of what they really did in the window. Only a couple of players coming in, but those two that do come in off Randes and Zala and Kieran Phillips, the latter on loan from Huddersfield, that sort of adds a bit more firepower for Exeter. And I think as well, again, it's another window where they've managed to keep Josh Key at right back, despite yet more sort of talk about him. Again, there seems to be every window at some point his name crops up being linked with clubs further up the division. So to keep players like him as well, I think is important for Exeter. So again, whilst it's not been the busiest, the fact that it's been sort of solid in terms of keeping those key players and, sort of reinforcing well with a couple more coming in, I'll go for a B.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair appraisal of their window. Moving away from Exeter, let's talk Forest Green Rovers. Obviously, been league leaders for such a long time now in League Two. Doesn't look like anyone's really going to catch them as well. They're looking on course to win the title. So in that respect, many probably didn't think they needed to do too much in the transfer market. What did you make, though, of FGR's window, Toby?
Yeah, as you say, 12 points clear at the top of the table with games in hand on a couple of those sides just behind them. So in a really strong position and probably just one of consolidating, really making sure, they kept the players who've sort of put them in that position already. And they sort of managed to do that, obviously, with the likes of Jamil Matt Stevens, Nicky Cadden, all still at the club. So, sort of making sure they were there was really important. And then obviously there's Casey McAteer is that one addition coming on loan from Leicester into those attacking midfield ranks, which potentially just gives them that extra little bit of firepower if they need to turn to that with someone who should have a point to prove as he looks to sort of show that he can force his way up the divisions towards sort of the level his parent club are at. So I think, again, solid window, done the main thing they needed to do in terms of keeping the key players. So, but can't really go over the top given they've not made any, sort of spectacular head-turning signings. So another B there for Forest Green.
Yeah, I think it was always key, wasn't it, that Forest Green, with some of the stellar performances they've had so far from certain players so far this season. It was always important that they kept them more than anything, really, and that appears to be what they've done. Moving away from Forest Green, let's go down to Harrogate Town next. Toby, what do you make of their market?
Again, not too bad a market. We saw Leon Legg come in from Port Vale, sort of on a swap deal with Connor Halls heading the other way. I think it was to Port Vale, obviously. So they've brought in a solid, experienced League Two centre back there. So not a bad piece of business at all. A few more otherwise couple coming in from Huddersfield with Osterfield and Diarra. So that offers them a bit more in those positions. And I think as well, another big one in terms of keeping a key player is the fact that Luke Armstrong obviously is still at Harrogate after such an impressive sort of first half of the season with them. That sort of we did see a few clubs further up the divisions being linked with him. So you wondered whether that might put a bit of pressure on them if any sort of offers came in with how important he is to them. The fact that they did manage to keep him and that interest never really quite materialised is really useful in terms of keeping that attacking threat that they're going to need to sort of turn this around after a bit of a poor run of form for them. So yeah, again, fairly solid window. You might be sensing a theme. I've gone for a B.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair enough though. Harrogate obviously looking to try and get back towards the top 7. Started the season really great form, didn't they? But have obviously tailed off in more recent times. Moving away from them, let's go to Hartlepool United in the northeast now. Toby, what do you make of the Pools window in January?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of touched on it when we were talking about Bradford, didn't we, with them getting Matty Daly. I think that's a big loss for Hartlepool in terms of what he could do for them, what he did do for them in the first half of the season. So that'll be disappointing. But, I mean, to be fair, they made a couple of interesting, pretty exciting attacking additions. Omar Bogle's come in It's another chance for him to really show what he can do. It didn't quite work out for him as he might have hoped at Doncaster, but it's shown before he can get goals at this level, so that could be useful for him for Hartlepool there. And sort of coming up in the opposite direction, Marcus Carver joining from Southport in the National League North. He's been prolific at that sort of level for Port and for Chorley in the past. So again, it'll be really interesting to see if he can make that sort of step up for the Pools now that he's playing Football League week in, week out. And I think as well, there's been some other solid loan additions in fairness for the Pools. So obviously, as I say, Daly and the situation there's a bit of a disappointment, but nevertheless a fairly consistent consolidatory window for Hartlepool. So I'll give them a B.
Okay, just above Hartlepool at the moment in the League Two table, which is perhaps a little bit of a surprise, at least given the start of the season. They've tailed off much like Harrogate actually. Leyton Orient, Toby, do you think they did enough in the window to try and spark themselves back into life? They need to get back to winning ways pretty sharpish, don't they? It's been a pretty barren spell for them of late.
Yeah, it has been tough for them. Obviously, they're another team who will be sort of looking at that top seven. Definitely, they should be with sort of the pedigree they've got. And to be fair, again, I don't think this has been too bad a window for them, with the exception of the departure of Dan Kemp to MK Dons. That'll be a bit of a blow, but obviously there's a fee involved there. So that's something for them to sort of consolate from that. And again, I think there's been some useful additions. Otis Khan coming from Walsall, good player at this level. To be honest, I was impressed with that piece of business for Walsall, getting him in the summer. So slightly surprised he's moved on quickly, but I think that shows that this could be a good bit of business for them. Likes of Frank Newblay and George Ray come in as well. That's some decent experience at this level as well for Orient. So I think all in all, despite the departure of Kemp, it's not been a disastrous window for them. So I'm going to go for another B, and I promise we're not going to just do Bs all the way through.
That's all right, Toby. We'll hold you to that now. Yeah, but I think you're right with the Otis Khan one. He is a player, particularly League Two level, that when he's on his day is a real standout performer. Obviously, Orient will be hoping to get plenty of that now that they've got him on their books. Let's move away then from the O's. Let's talk Mansfield Town next. Obviously been in great form in recent times in League Two, got themselves firmly in the playoff and promotion picture. What do you make of the Stags window, Toby?
Yeah, well, I told you we weren't sticking with B's. I've been really impressed here, and I've gone for an A for Mansfield. I think to start with, Matty Longstaff, what a sort of coup, what a statement of intent that is to bring him in from Newcastle. He's held his own in the Premier League before, so to have him now playing at League Two, I think is a really sort of good piece of business for them. Obviously, Jamie Murphy, I think, coming in on loan as well. That's from Hibs, Scottish international. So that's another eye-catching signing. And I think as well, I sort of touched on this when I was talking about Burton in the League One show yesterday. Lucas Akins, absolute icon at Burton and at League One level with them. So to bring him in to field Mill in League Two, I think is a really sort of impressive statement of intent. And I was reading sort of when Akins departed about how Mansfield was sort of able to offer him perhaps the long-term security that Burton weren't able to do, was sort of some of the comments I seem to be reading about that. So for Mansfield to be able to do that when Burton weren't, again, that's really impressive for the Stags. I think one slight disappointment is that the departure of Harry Charsley, who has been a pretty consistent figure for Mansfield over the past couple of seasons, but nevertheless, I think they have managed to offset that with the likes of Longstaff and Akins. So I've gone for an A for a solid piece of business on a number of occasions there for Mansfield.
Yeah, some really eye-catching stuff. The Longstaff one is one that you sort of read over and over again and can't quite believe it's happened. With all due respect to Mansfield, you kind of thought maybe if he was going to leave Newcastle on loan, it would be to a Championship side. So it's some coup, and Lucas Akins as well. Obviously, a real seasoned EFL performer, should be able to really help Mansfield out as they aim to win promotion this year. Let's move away from the Stags. Let's talk Newport County next, Toby. A team that has quite often got themselves in the playoff race in seasons gone by. They're there again. They're in the top three at the moment, so they'll be looking to avoid that lottery that is the playoff fixtures at the end of the season. How would you assess their window?
Pretty middling, really, if I'm honest. So I've gone for a C there. It wasn't particularly eventful either in terms of incomings or outgoings. Though I do think that Josh Pask coming in defence on loan from Coventry could be a useful signing for them, because he's got that sort of pedigree of a championship player from that spell there, and obviously points to prove, and having never really been given the opportunities he would have wanted for quite some time with the Sky Blues. And I think other than that, it was probably about keeping some of their key players. Obviously, Dominic Telford being the standout one with his goals that he scored in the first half of the season. Being able to still call upon them in the second half of the campaign feels like it's going to be really important for Newport if they're going to get promotion this season. So, yeah, reasonably solid window, but since it's been nothing spectacular, I'll be honest, I've just gone for a C here.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think the Telford point is a good point. That Toby, obviously a really important player to their chances. Let's move to Northampton Town. Then next, the Cobblers window. Toby, how have you graded it?
I think this has been a really good window for Northampton Town. I've been really impressed by this. I've actually gone for an A. Obviously, they're another side sort of pushing towards that promotion picture. And I think that the big thing for them was maybe bringing in some extra attacking firepower, because that's something they've sort of lacked a bit in comparison to the other teams that they're competing with for promotion at the minute. So, and I think they certainly did that. Obviously, I think Louis Apparay, bringing him in on a permanent deal from Dundee United in the Scottish Premiership, I think that's a really sort of big and impressive signing for them. That sort of change from top flight in Scotland to fourth tier in England, that really for me stands out as a good piece of business. And other than that, they've backed that up with the other sort of signings they've made in attack, the likes of Chaka Zimba, Idris Kanu, Josh Eppier, Libala as well. There's a lot there that they've added to their attack. So you would expect certainly the sort of issue they've had with goals during the first half of the season shouldn't be as significant between now and the end of the campaign. And then as well, Tyler Maglaw coming in from Blackburn, that's sort of a big opportunity for him again to prove himself with regular first team football. Something he's not really had the opportunity with at Blackburn, but on occasions when he has been given that chance, even in the Championship with Rovers, he's looked solid at times. So if he can produce them sort of performances, he'll be really useful at League Two level for Northampton. So with all that in mind, I've given them an A.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair shout. Northampton, then another side that are up at the right end of the table. That's a few teams we've touched on there that are in and around the playoff and promotion places. But we're going to move our focus back down towards the bottom of the table now. Talk Oldham Athletic. Obviously, very tough situation off the pitch, as has been the case there for quite a while now. 8 points off of safety. Do have a couple of games in hand on those above them, but it's certainly looking pretty dire at the moment for Oldham, I think it's fair to say. Toby, what did you make of the Latics window?
Yeah, well, like you say, we've gone from the top end of the table to the bottom end of the table in League Two. And to be honest, I've gone from the top end of the grading scale to the bottom end of the grading scale here with Oldham, because I've just gone for an E. I think it's been really disappointing window for them. Obviously, with the off-field issues, it might have been difficult for them in terms of getting signings in, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they really, to me, feel like they've missed out here. We were talking earlier about some of the other teams in that sort of relegation battle, the likes of Carlisle and Colchester, who've really strengthened to give themselves a chance of pulling away, and Oldham haven't really given themselves that shot to get out of this situation with only 2 signings. So they've sort of left themselves behind for one reason or another in comparison to their relegation rivals. I mean, in fairness, I do think Alex Hunt coming in midfield from Sheffield Wednesday, he's a player with a fair amount of promise who, could provide something for them. But I know as well there was a lot of Oldham fans who were really crying out for some attacking additions. Obviously, the loss of Zach Durnley was a blow, and they did sort of in the end have brought in Mike Fondup, so they have got a striker there. But with greatest respect, he's not been the most prolific during his career, looking at his record so far. So even though he does come in to sort of add to that attack, I do wonder if he can get the goals that Oldham are going to need if they're going to have any chance of pulling themselves out of the relegation zone. So I just think that's been a really sort of disappointing window for the Latics, both in terms of what they've been able to do and in comparison to the clubs around them. So yeah, not for an E there.
Yeah, I think a window that largely reflects their season, unfortunately, for Oldham. Let's talk Port Vale next, Toby. How would you assess their window?
Yeah, busy one in and out really for Port Vale. There's been a lot of incomings and a lot of outgoings. In terms of the incomings, I think as we touched on with Mansfield, Harry Charsley, that's an impressive signing. I think for Port Vale with what he can do at this level. Thomas Holy coming in from Ipswich on loan, so that he's a sort of really solid goalkeeper even at League One level. So I think he should really be able to do a good job for Port Vale here in League Two. Ryan Edmondson on loan from Leeds. He's one who's really got a point to prove up front. I think he made a bit of an impression in a decent draw with Forest Green earlier midweek. So that already looks to be a bit of a promising signing. But again, I just sort of wonder whether with the turnover of players, as we say, the likes of Leon Legg and Devante Rodney who moved on, whether that turnover might have a bit of an impact on what Port Vale are sort of able to do in terms of settling aside. It might make it a bit of a challenge, hence why I've gone for a B here.
Okay, let's move to Rochdale next. What do you make of their market, Toby?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed one for Rochdale, in fairness. I think Tavon Campbell obviously has been prolific with Woking, so if he can make the step up to League Two, then he could be a really useful signing. I think Corey O'Keefe, that's a loan deal that's been made permanent, which has gone down really well, I think, at Rochdale, given how good he was during the first half of the season. So that's another tick in their box. I mean, to be honest, having watched Paul Downing quite regularly, even just a few seasons ago, I'm sort of absolutely staggered that he's had to drop down to League Two level to get game time with Rochdale. So again, that sort of shows you he should be a very good signing for them at centre back. But on the flip side to that, they've lost some big players in the likes of Jake Beasley to Blackpool and Aaron Morley to Bolton. So that those are a couple of key figures who've moved on, and that's going to be a loss for them, even with the fees that will be coming into to Rochdale for those players. So I think whilst they have done sort of well in terms of some of the signings they've made, just the fact that they've lost two key players there means I'm only really tempted to go for a C here.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Kind of balanced it out. Aaron Morley, a particularly good player that I think was always destined to move away from Rochdale, has moved to Bolton, as you mentioned there, Toby. Let's talk Salford City next. It's always interesting seeing what Salford get up to in transfer windows. How did you assess their market?
Yeah, again, a bit like Bristol Rovers earlier, quality over quantity, but very good quality. So I've gone for an A. I mean, I think Matt Smith coming in from Millwall, that's an outstanding signing to be able to get him at this level with sort of the experience, the quality he brings from the Championship, because even at the Championship level, he can really do business with the physicality, the ability to really put himself about. I think the other one that sort of caught my eye for Salford, Luke Bolton. As coming in as a winger, I think that's eye-catching for a few reasons. First off, given Barnsley in the Championship, what I saw linked with him, so I think that's impressive in terms of being able to get him in despite that. But I think also, obviously, he's coming in from Manchester City, which makes this interesting when you consider Salford's ownership with the class of '92. So I think that sort of brought a bit of a chuckle to me. In terms of outgoings, obviously Tom Elliott's moved on, as we touched on at Bradford, so that's sort of you lose a presence there, but they've obviously filled that, as we say, with Matt Smith. So I think on the whole, really good window for Salford in terms of what they've added to their side. So I've given them an A.
Yeah, the Matt Smith one almost at the level of the Matty Longstaff to Mansfield deal, really, and just in terms of the sort of surprise that it caused. It's going to be really interesting to see how he gets on there with Salford in the for the rest of the season at least. Scunthorpe United up next, Toby. It's a similar story to Oldham, really, isn't it? Been very tough for them this year. They're kind of at risk already of being cut adrift at the bottom of the league. There's an 8-point gap they need to try and make up. What did you make of their market?
Yeah, as you say, they're in a very similar position to Oldham in the league, but I think they've had a much better window. Scunthorpe, we sort of said Oldham didn't really give themselves a chance with not bringing players in. Scunthorpe absolutely have, for my money. I think the likes of Liam Feeney and Anthony Grant on permanent deals, that sort of shows the intent, and that's two sort of really experienced players who've played at a lot higher level than this, so they should obviously help. Joe Nuttall as well sort of brings in that attacking firepower to help push them on. Again, the fact that that's a permanent is another bit of a coup coming from Blackpool, where it never quite worked out for him. And I mean, the back that up as well, Sam Burns on loan from Blackburn already scoring for them, and Rakul Pike coming in from Shrewsbury as well. So they're giving themselves sort of the attacking options they're going to need to get the goals to get out of this position. And I think as well, one other that really impressed me with Scunthorpe is the loan move for Luke Mattison from Wolves. I'm absolutely stunned that for him to be having to get game time, he's had to go all the way down to the League Two relegation zone, because I mean, he was outstanding for Rochdale a couple of seasons ago, even at such an early age in League One. So I think for Scunthorpe to have been able to swoop and get that deal done is really impressive. So yeah, whilst they're struggling like Oldham, they've had a much better window, and I've gone for an A there, given sort of the permanent nature of some of them deals and the quality of the players they've brought in.
Yeah, certainly some eye-catching names, particularly given the way Scunthorpe season has been and how they've struggled. It's been impressive to manage to get those players in, and we're clearly up for the fight and up for the challenge of trying to turn things around in the remainder of the campaign. Up next, Stevenage. Toby, what did you make of their window?
Pretty solid, really. No sort of major eye-catching signings or big damaging departures, really. So just a bit solid, gone for a B. I do think Christy Pym is a really useful goalkeeper for them to bring in. Obviously, things haven't worked out for him at Peterborough. There seems to be a bit of a fallout behind the scenes there. So for Stevenage to swoop and bring him to League Two from that sort of championship position is quite impressive, to be fair. I think Zane Westbrook as well, for coming in from Bristol Rovers, and Michael Bostwick coming in. There's some experience they've added there, with certainly the ability to go with that as well. So yeah, I think that's a fairly standard, strong window for Stevenage that should help them consolidate their position in the Football League for the rest of the season. So I've given them a B.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Christy Pym, obviously, when he was at Exeter, was one of the standout goalkeepers, wasn't he, at League Two level? So, Stevenage will obviously be looking for him to try and replicate that form. One Rovers vlogs has got in touch. Bristol Rovers, obviously, really happy with our business. Even the amount of players coming back from injuries feel like new signings, like Harvey Saunders and Josh Grant. As we said, Toby, earlier on in the show, it was very much sort of quality over quantity, wasn't it? For the Gas in January, Joey Barton using his contact books by the look of it as well. Moving away from Stevenage then, though, let's get to Sutton United next. They've been one of the stories of the season so far, Toby, in League Two. What did you make of their window, though?
Yeah, as you said, they've been an absolute standout team on the whole with what they've been able to do, just coming up from the National League last season to now going straight into that League Two playoff battle is incredible. And it seems almost as though the sort of aim for Sutton in this window has been to just largely keep that squad together that they've had, because it was only really one in terms of a goalkeeper, Stuart Nelson from Dorking, and just the outgoing of Toby Show-Silver up front to Hartlepool. So other than to Carlisle, sorry. So other than that, not a great deal to really talk about in either direction for Sutton. So it's hard to really judge them on anything more than a C slap bang in the middle. But to be fair, as I say, it keeps the squad together that's done so well for them. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and it would be really good to see them continue to sort of defy a lot of expectations over the rest of the season.
Certainly, seems to have become the neutrals team in League Two. I think it's fair to say this year with the way they've been going. Swindon Town up next, Toby. Obviously, a team that's looking to try and achieve promotion via one avenue or another. What did you make of the Robins market?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they suffered a few blows, didn't they? Some quite significant loan players being recalled, the likes of Tyrese Simpson going back to Ipswich, Ken Kessler recalled by Villa, now at MK Dons in League One, and again, Romani Critchlow, another one brought back and given the chance in League One by Huddersfield. He's now at Plymouth. Though, you look at those three players, they were massive for Swindon in the first half of the season, so they're big losses, but to be fair to Swindon, I do think they've moved well to sort of respond to that and give them still the sort of foundation and the talent they need to still compete. I think Louis Barry on loan is a bit of a standout one. Didn't really work out for him at Ipswich on loan from Villa during the first half of the season, but he's absolutely got a great deal of talent and a great deal of ability. I mean, just ask Liverpool. He can get the goals for Swindon that they've sort of maybe lost with Tyrese Simpson. Josh Davison, again, on loan from Charlton, another option in terms of offering some firepower. Brandon Cooper's come in, I think, from Swansea. So, that sort of shores up the defence a bit after the departures of the likes of Critchlow and Kessler. So, yeah, they've responded well to those setbacks. And in addition to that, they've kept people like Harry McCurdy, who, he's a massive player for them with the goals that he's been scoring. So a pretty solid window, but given the disappointment they'll have been at losing those players that they have developed and sort of built a strong connection with over the first half of the season, I'm just going to go for a B here.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I guess it's one of those that you could upgrade to an A in maybe 2 months' time, depending on how the guys that have come in replace those that have left. Louis Barry, I think, is a really interesting one. As you mentioned, Toby, bags of talent obviously coming through at Aston Villa. This is an opportunity for him to really show what he's all about at a senior level. 2 more teams to talk about then before we wrap up and leave you this afternoon. Tranmere Rovers up next. A side that, after a pretty sluggish start has really soared in towards that promotion race now. Obviously, lack of goals is still a little bit of an issue for Rovers. Their goals for column is scarcely believable given their league position. But what did you make of their window, Toby?
Yeah, as you say, I think that was sort of the standout thing for Tranmere was sort of that goals issue. I mean, 29 for a team in their position at this stage of the season is quite incredible. But to be fair to them, I think they've moved well. They've looked to address that, bringing in Kane Hemmings permanently from Burton Albion. So that there is their striker that they're seemingly turning to, and he does, obviously, from playing at that higher level, he is someone who you would expect can make that impact. Other than that, Josh Hawkes obviously was on loan from Sunderland first half of the season, so a bit of a pleasing deal there for Tranmere to make that a permanent. And just sort of in terms of that goal scoring issue as well, Josh McPake coming in from Rangers on loan. Obviously, he's more of a winger than a striker, but his creativity could really be something that opens up the chances for the likes of Hemmings to put the ball in the back of the net and really impact and boost that goal scored tally. Opposite directions are like Ryan Watson moving on to Salford and Liam Feeney. Obviously, there's a couple of experienced players there moving out, but I think all in all a pretty good window for Tranmere. So I'm going to, given the move to do what they needed to in terms of adding to their attack, I'll give them an A.
Okay, they'll be hoping that the goals start to flow a little bit more than they have done the first sort of half of the season. One final team to talk about, Toby, that's Walsall. What do you make of the window for Matt Taylor's men?
Yeah, not a bad window, but not a spectacular one either. I would say, in all honesty, I think obviously Roland Menezes has made his move permanent, so that seems to be one that's gone down well. It was really impressive, won a lot of plaudits at Walsall during the first half of the season, so that'll be good. Donovan Daniels also coming in on permanent. That helps shore up the defence, whilst Devante Rodney gives them another option in attack. And Reece Devine, one to keep an eye on, coming in from Manchester United, another sort of young lone player with that Premier League pedigree now, looking to really make a point. And as we sort of touched on, Otis Khan obviously moved in the opposite direction. Things didn't really sort of take off maybe for him in the way we expected them to after his move. So all in all, just a bit of a mixed sort of window in the middle for a team who look probably set for mid-table this season. So I've gone for a C there.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's a pretty decent summary of Walsall. They'll obviously be looking to try and climb up the table as high as they can, but yeah, I think a mid-table prediction for them as well, perhaps for the Saddlers, is probably the best it's going to be, at least this season, for them. That brings the debate to a close this afternoon, where we've been grading every League Two club's January transfer window. Coming up on Football League World TV, one more show this afternoon, that's at 4 p.m. Another debate show, perhaps a little bit more light-hearted. Three EFL managers you'd love to go for a pint with, and why. Sam Rourke hosting that one. Ben Wignall and Adam Jones be joining him. It'll be quite interesting to get their thoughts and hear what they have to say on that one, who they'd like to go down the pub with in terms of EFL managers. I'm sure there's a few names that we can all think of, but tune into that one at 4 p.m. later today. Toby, been great to get your thoughts this afternoon on all the League Two clubs. Been some really interesting stuff there. We'll have to see how each of the 24 teams does in the coming months of the campaign. And thanks to those that have been watching and sending in the comments too. That's been greatly appreciated. Just before we go, a quick plug for the channel. Do subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube. That'll help us as we try and continue to grow things at the start of 2022. And I do like this video as well. That'll help us greatly too. But for myself and Toby, it's bye for now.